Hi, and welcome to the Mixed Dandelions podcast, where we talk about being mixed, military, and moving on. So today I'm joined by Lexy. Hi, Lexy.
Hello.
Lexy, this is actually the first time I'm meeting her. She's a friend of
Yes.
my nephews. So my sister got me in touch with her. So I'm so happy to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Me
Um,
too.
why don't we just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then also what your racial and ethnic background is and how you self-identify racially and ethnically.
Perfect. So my name is Lexy Meeks. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, but I grew up in Melbourne, Florida my entire life. Um, my mother is white and my father is Kenyan. So he was actually born in Kenya, and my mom, I'm trying to think of my mom's like actual background, but she's just mixed with a bunch of different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Um,
how do
wait,
you self-identify?
like ethnically?
No, just racially. So like when people ask you like,
Yeah, I just
so
say
what
I'm
race?
mixed, black and
Okay.
white. Yeah.
All right. And then you served in the military, right? So you are a
Yes,
vet.
5 years. Yes.
5 years. Wow. What branch was it?
Mhm. Navy.
Okay. Did you like travel around while you were in the Navy, or were you pretty much
Yes, I
stationed?
did. I did.
Okay.
So I joined right out of high school. I was 18. So I was stationed in California. It was Lemoore, California. It's like in the middle of nowhere. It's like literally, it's just land. It's an airfield. I worked in aviation, so I wasn't really on a ship as much, but whenever we would go on a ship, we would travel all over. I've seen a bunch of different places. I've been on deployment twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, what were some of those places that you like? Did you have a favorite place or?
Yeah, so I've been to Singapore, the Philippines, South Korea twice, Hawaii, Alaska. Um, I went to Guam. I've
Okay.
been to Dubai, and I've been to Thailand.
Wow. Yeah. So you have been to quite a few
Yeah, I
places.
think I think Dubai and Thailand were definitely my favorite, just because I mean, it's beautiful there. And I mean, I was just so happy at 18, 19, 20 to travel anyways. I mean, I want to travel now as well, but it was just like really eye-opening for me to see all the different cultures and see how people live. It's really like crazy how isolated we are here, and like, to be able to go over there and see different cultures and how they live their day-to-day lives is amazing.
I mean, did you have, yeah, because you went to, I mean, those are a lot, it's a lot of Asia. And
A lot of
I
Asia,
mean,
yeah.
Asia compared to the US, yes, that is a bit of a culture shock. And I guess for someone who was born and raised in one specific town, like
Right.
and in Florida, like what was that like for you when you first like went somewhere new?
So I think a culture shock for me too was just the Navy in general, right?
Okay.
Because it was so diverse. I mean, growing up, it was a lot of diversity, but it was really diverse when I joined. It was like from the moment I was in boot camp, it was like people from all over the world were in this one area, and different accents and different backgrounds, and it was just honestly from day one of joining, it was really amazing to meet different people. And I'm in this little bubble in Melbourne, Florida, and those are
Right.
people I grew up with my whole life. And I just, yeah, I feel like it was, I mean, I wouldn't say like culture shock, because I wasn't there for like prolonged period of time. Like, I feel like I was only there for like 5 days maximum. So it was more just like I was there, I appreciated everything, I was so happy to be there, and then we kind of left. But because it was on deployment, like we were on the ship, we would
Mm-hmm.
go in, we would dock for like like 3 to 4 days, and then we would leave. So it wasn't like I was traveling like 2 week increments or like a long period of time, but I feel like it was enough time to still be able to eat the food and see the different types of people. And yeah, it was actually pretty crazy now that I think back on it. It was a completely different time, a completely different life. I feel like I've already lived 3 lives. It's crazy.
Well, so what was that like though, being on the ship? Like how long would you be on like deployment on a ship? Would it just be like weeks or
Yeah.
months or?
So that I think was more of a like an adjustment for me because we would go out. My first deployment was 8 months, and
Oh,
then my
wow.
second deployment was 10. So I really feel like living on the ship is not easy. You're just on an aircraft carrier with 5,000 people, and you really just you make the best of it. You're kind of crammed in with three girls on one side, three girls on the other. It's probably like within this,
Oh
much
my
space.
goodness.
Yeah, so it's really an adjustment as far as like living wise.
Mm-hmm.
You're so close to people every single day. I was working 12 to 14-hour shifts, 7 days a week. We didn't have any days off. So that was really hard too. I think when people think of like the military, they only know really, what you see on movies or on
Mm-hmm.
TV. Like there's jobs for everything in the military, like somebody has to work the toilet, somebody has to cook for you, somebody has to, there's jobs for everything in the military. So yeah, it was really, I think that was more of a shock for me than the traveling part. But I adjusted and I got used to it. But yeah, as far as being on the ship, I was really on really only on the ship for when I was on deployment or like mini detachments. And I got really lucky in the Navy because I was in a squadron. So I was mostly on land until we had to work up to go to deployment. So it wasn't as bad.
So being on a ship though for 8 months, like I can't imagine like having to do that. Like mentally, did you guys ever have to do like counseling or psych tests or anything like that beforehand?
That is so funny that you say that because I've gotten that question before, and no, it's really
Oh,
just
really?
like, it really is crazy to think, especially that young, right? You're like,
Right.
I think my first deployment, I was 20. So for me, it's like I'm just learning things as it is. And there isn't really any pre counseling, or it's really just they throw you in, you're working these hard shifts. And, if you need counseling on the ship, that's not really accessible. I hate to say it, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, just focus on getting home. Once you get
Mm-hmm.
home, then you can kind of focus on your mental health and take a break from whatever you've been going through. It's really sad to say too, because you're really kind of just conditioned to get through it. Like you're working every single day, so you don't really look forward to like a weekend, or
Mm-hmm.
what we would look forward to is just seeing land. It's really crazy. Like we would go out for 30, 40 days at a time, and we wouldn't see land, yeah, for almost a month and a half, and then we would be like on land for what, 2, 3 days, and that was all we would get.
See, that's so, and like I would probably just feel claustrophobic. And then like
Oh, for
I don't
sure.
even want to go
Yes.
on a cruise. Like I have no desire to be on a cruise ship
No, yeah.
because
It's definitely, and there are people, especially, people have those issues where they can't, your rack that you sleep in is probably about this high.
right.
You cannot turn around. You can't turn around in your
Oh
rack.
my
Like you go
goodness.
in, just sleep, and it's a little bed. But again, it's weird. It's like a community. You become like a
Mhm.
family because that's all you know. There's no outside communication with your family. We don't have cell phones, that's not a thing. So if you could get internet access, it was probably for about 5 minutes, and you had like Facebook
Wow.
at the time, So it was really, to us, it was important just to get that 5 minutes of like an email out to your family, and like an email back was kind of like our sanity. It was intense.
It sounds like it. I guess just like
Yeah.
having to focus on like the mission, the job, your work, what you're doing. And then I guess just that like looking forward to hitting land and what's gonna come when you
Yes.
do finally. Yeah, I could not even imagine. Like I said, I don't even like have a desire
Yes.
to go on a cruise ship because of I
No,
was just
I
like, I
don't
don't
blame
know,
you. I
like
didn't either. I'm just now getting you like, you know what? Maybe I will go on a cruise, because to me, a cruise is like, that's a walk in the park, that's nothing. But Yeah, I was scarred for a minute too. It took me a couple years to even consider going on a cruise. It was like anything with
Insane.
water, I'm over it.
I mean, yeah, like the views must have been beautiful, but then like,
Yeah, and you know what? Everyone always tells me that, like, oh, you must have just seen, but what's crazy is like you really just see water. Like it's just
yeah.
water for miles and miles. There's nothing. It's just water, and it's crazy because it's like, wow, you're staring out into this beautiful. You're on top of the aircraft carrier, and you're staring out into these beautiful views, and you're just like, I just want to go home. Like I don't care. I don't care about the water. I don't care about any of this. But yeah, it's crazy that you say too, like you look forward to the land because whenever we would land that first day, you're just exhausted. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like, honestly, the only thing I would want to do the first whole day is like go to sleep. I was just excited to have a hotel room, my own shower, and just like sleep for the whole day. And then the next day we could like, walk around and do whatever. But yeah, it's crazy, right? Because you think like in the military, oh, I get to travel the world, but it's like it comes at a cost for sure.
Hmm. That
Yeah.
is insane. I can't, yeah, I can't. So if you did aviation, so I always,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know what I'm gonna say. So like we just finished
Um,
watching Top Gun, so that's what I think
yes.
of. Is that kind of what it
That's
was like?
exactly, that is
Oh,
it.
was
Everything to a T is what I did. Everything he was doing. Obviously, that's the pilot side of things, right? But like
right.
all of those little workers, like in the colored shirts that were helping him get ready, that was me. That had the cranial. I'm on the flight deck. I'm tired. I'm pushing stuff around. I'm getting his jet together. That was what we did. So we would do flight ops and work on land, obviously, because we had jets, we had
Hmm.
aircraft. But and then the people that worked on the ship primarily was like, that was to keep the ship like running for like an aircraft carrier. So then you have people in the Navy that are only stationed on ships, which is like extremely unfortunate because that's 90% of the Navy. I got
Right.
really lucky. I got really lucky with the job that I qualified for so that I was able to go into aviation. And, for the majority of the year, I was on land, which I really appreciated. And then we would have our weekends, that was normal. Like the only time we don't have weekends is like on deployment, but we have to really mentally prepare ourselves. I feel like the months leading up to deployment, every single day, we're just telling ourselves, like, you know what? We gotta just we gotta get ready. You have to like really kind of build up to it, because you're gonna deploy about a year before. So
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, I couldn't because I had thought about joining the Air Force since my dad was in the Air
the
Force.
Air Force, though, I probably would still be in. It's like the Beverly Hills of the military. Like
Yeah,
it really
there's
is. It's
definitely
amazing.
like a hierarchy.
Yeah, it's really is amazing. I mean, even enlisted, like they get treated, oh my gosh, their bases are nicer, the food is nicer, where they live is nicer. So definitely, Air Force is definitely, that was my top pick too, but they were on like a 2-year setback. So I was like, oh, Navy, because my
Mm.
grandfather was in the Navy, but I definitely would, I would join Air Force. Not
There
now,
is,
but
yeah, there is. It was funny because, and I guess I never thought about it until because growing up in the Air Force, and then we moved to Okinawa and we had to live on a Marine Corps base, and then it
yes,
was like a bit different. And
it
then
was
like
different, right?
now as an adult, I'm like, I wonder what like even like the high school for the Air Force, like how different that was
Oh,
compared to
yeah.
the high school that because I went to a high school where it was mostly like Marine Corps, Navy, some Army
Hmm.
kids, and yeah, like often wonder, and then like things that you hear from like Marines and about the Air Force or even like Marine
Yeah,
kids and
especially
like
Marines, right? I
yes.
mean, we'll talk about anyone, but
Or even like the
yeah,
jokes that the Air Force has, with
for
Marine Corps
Marines
people.
or any
So I'm
branch.
just like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, it's definitely day and night. I would say Navy is a close second for, from Air Force, but
Hmm.
definitely completely different. Everyone wants to join the Air Force. It's pretty, they get treated like royalty up there.
Oh, Air Force
For
is
the
the
most
cool
part.
kids.
Yes.
So I guess while in the military, like comparing, Melbourne, Florida, and then like how you were talking about how the diversity was a little eye-opening for you. Let's talk about that a little bit, I guess. What were some of the like I guess comparing and contrasting, like when you were growing up and like those perceptions and stereotypes that maybe people put on you or thought about you as being mixed race when they saw you. And then just like, what was that like growing up? And then how did that compare to when you were in the Navy?
So growing up, when I was really little, my whole family, I grew up on my white side.
Right.
My biological father was never in my life. So for me, growing up with my mom, she's a single mom. Yeah, my entire life, all I knew was my white family. So that was just super comfortable and super normal for me until I feel like I hit high school. And that was kind of like an identity crisis for me. It was kind of like, that's weird. Like, I'm Black, but my whole family's white. Whenever my friends would come over, it was really like, it was different for them too. Like, my Black friends would be like, oh, like, we don't live like this. Like, this is different for us, or whatever you eat, or how you talk, or, like it was definitely, high school was like a turning point for me because I realized that I identified, or I felt more comfortable around Black people.
Mm-hmm.
100%. 100% more comfortable naturally too. It wasn't anything forced. I just felt all of my friends were Black in high school, even middle school. And it was weird too because when I joined the Navy, I didn't even really realize when I looked back, I was like, oh my gosh, like that was something that just came naturally to me. My mom was always supportive of anyone I wanted to hang out with or not hang out with. I just think for her too, growing up, she never really thought about what Lexi would have to deal with maybe when she was older. Like
Mm-hmm.
my brother's white because we have two different dads. So I look like
Okay.
the adopted one. It's
Have
like
you
my
ever
mom,
had people like say something about that? Like, because I've heard like stories from other
yeah,
mixed
I've had
people
people,
where,
nothing, I've never had anything rude or like, insinuate like something in like a bad manner, but I have had comments, obviously, right, from like my Black friends, um, maybe just like my mannerisms or how I would act, or on my white side, being with my family sometimes, maybe they would make comments that I would be like, huh, that's a little different too. Nothing crazy. It's just I see both sides of it. Like sometimes I remember in high school I was walking like in a grocery store and it was my mom, my friend who was white or who is white, my brother, and like they thought that she was the daughter, like checking out because
mm-hmm.
I met somebody at the cashier and she was like, oh, like where's your mom? And I was like, oh, she's right here. And she's like, oh my God, I thought that was her mom. And I was like, yeah. Yeah. So I mean little comments here and there, but I definitely, as I was older, I definitely felt more comfortable. I hate to say comfortable. It's just like I fit in, I feel like more with Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when you joined the Navy and you got into that, like, did that change at all? Or do you feel like those perceptions about how you looked or who you were, like racially, like, do you think that there was any kind of emphasis or like less emphasis or
It's funny too because being mixed, I get every race, right? It's like
mm-hmm.
some people will be like, "Oh, you're Hispanic," or especially because I mean I live in Miami, so people come up to me all the time speaking Spanish, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, no, I don't speak
I
Spanish."
feel you, I get that too. So
Yeah, like, "Oh, you're Hispanic," or I've literally gotten anything. People sometimes don't even think I'm mixed; they just think I'm Black. Some people think, maybe I'm mixed with, I don't know. So I think I've seen a little bit of every reaction. Like if I tell people my background, they're either like really surprised or like, oh, I could see that. So yeah, I don't know. When I joined the Navy, I don't think anything really changed. I think my close friend group was still more on either like the mixed side, like Hispanic or Black or, just a mixture of everything. I still had white friends, obviously, but I never Yeah, I guess I never really thought of it. I would get questions a lot though, like about my background, like what my race was, because people are really confused. Usually with like mixed
Mhm.
people, it can go so many ways, right? You just
Right.
don't know. You're just like, oh, like, her skin's lighter. She could be anything, especially nowadays, right? Everyone I feel like is mixing a little bit of something.
Right. No, of course. Like, how did you deal with that? Like, was that offensive to you, or was it just sort of, like, did you take it conversationally and
No, I don't think it was offensive. It was just,
or
it was hard.
curiosity?
It was hard too because in the military when I served, it was kind of like at the peak of what, when everything was going on, like Trump was just coming into office and it was like, I don't mean to get political, but it was just like it was the peak of things. So I think a lot of people's emotions were really heightened. Do you
Okay.
know what I mean? So, like it was just like, oh, you're just seeing like all these different opinions and all these different sides. And I just started to realize too that I formed my own opinions on things and I formed my own sides on things. And I don't know, it was just, I've never felt judged or looked at any different though from anybody in the military. I felt
Did
pretty
you ever
comfortable.
feel that way out of the military, like when you were growing up, or when even after getting out of the military in that civilian?
Oh, like transitioning into like the
Hmm.
civilian. So, do you mean just like because of my background or just in general?
Well, I guess just being mixed race, did you ever feel like that there was any kind of difference? So like you wouldn't, it wouldn't be offensive. You wouldn't, in the military people had their perceptions or whatever, but you said like, do you think that I guess growing up that was like, was there a difference, did you feel? Or even when you did transition out
You
of the
know what?
military?
I would say yes. You want to know why? I think it's because in the military, like I said, it is extremely diverse. There's so
Hmm.
many different, I mean, we had people from literally Africa, we had people from Italy, we had people
Right.
from Spain, we had people, New York, Chicago, everywhere, anywhere you could think of, Texas. So for that, it was like almost common to see every single race in the same room. And then in high school, obviously, we would hear like there's racism everywhere. But when you're younger, it's really hard to kind of understand what's happening to the full extent. Like
Right.
if
Yes.
like a white person would make a comment, it was like funny. It was like who cares when
You're
you're
like,
younger,
whatever.
yeah, it's like whatever, like they're being whatever, like who cares. But then the older you get, I feel like, especially like I said, that the peak in my naval career and when I got out, you understand a lot more, obviously, as the years go by, you're like, oh my gosh, like I am understanding a lot more and things are coming to the light for me. I think that was just from getting older though.
That's true. Well, I think too, I think it's, yes, it's from getting older, you're experiencing more. You've
Right.
experienced like being in the Navy, moving around, seeing different people, going to different countries where, people
Exactly.
might look different, their customs and the rules and the laws are different, the food, accents, everything, music.
Exactly.
Like there's a lot of differences in that. And I think that you're right, like that sort of changes, I guess, your view. And then you see like when people, so what you thought as a child was maybe just a stupid comment, as an adult it's a stupid comment, but it sort of, I guess,
It
goes
means
more into the,
something more,
yes, the
for
ignorance
sure.
behind what that person has just
Exactly.
said or done, that like, yeah, then you start to, because I
It's
remember
all it
being,
starts to click
yes,
a little bit more, for
when I
sure.
was
Yeah.
younger, like I remember, yeah, like when I first experienced racism, or even like with the N word, like I remember asking my mom,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And she smacked me. And I was like, I just wanted
Yeah.
to know what it
You're
meant
just
because
asking like I don't know. You genuinely didn't know.
and
Yeah.
then I found out and I
Right.
haven't said the word since. And but yeah, and then like now that you're older, I think because I guess as a mixed race, you're multifacial. And so I don't necessarily take too much offense. I do like when people start talking about and I guess this is something we could talk about with you too, like has anyone ever made you, I guess, feel like there's always that you know, the colorism within
Oh,
different
for
racial
sure.
communities, and
For
so
sure.
it's like you're never black enough or you're never white enough, and it's like, okay,
Mhm.
but you as a person of color, you're coming at me like that, whereas but you know, you want to be treated equally, so then
Same,
you should
right.
also treat other people equally, and saying that you're not enough of what you feel you are.
Forever saw, yeah, of
Yeah, like
course.
have you ever like come across anything like that where somebody maybe
Yeah, I think, I think especially I'm understanding people's, instead of like hearing a comment and attacking right away, right? Because it's easy to do. It's really
right?
easy to get offended. Like, it's really easy to react instead of like
Yes.
understanding, like, okay, but why is this person feeling this way? Like you mentioned colorism, colorism's been around we were since humans
Forever.
were alive,
Hmm.
I think that especially in the Black community, colorism is so prominent because, I mean, ever since the beginning of time, they've been separated based on literal skin color and skin tone. You know what I mean? Like the darker you were, that was pushed in a different direction. The lighter you were, that was pushed in a
Hmm.
different direction. Um, as far as like my actual skin tone, I don't think personally I've ever been in a situation where I felt like, oh, like somebody's really, upset or like coming for me. But I see it all the time. I see it all the time online. People will talk about dark skinned people and people will talk about light skinned people. And it's like at the end of the day, though, who cares? Like
Right.
we're all black, okay? We're all black. So it's like, yeah, I feel like that is really it's sad to say because it all comes down to what's more socially accepted, right? Like, well, if you are a lighter tone, white people won't feel as threatened. Or if you're a darker tone, you have this, maybe people will already perceive you to be something else, which is, I mean, it's all, I don't want to curse, but it's all,
Yes. Yeah.
bull. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's hard though. It's really hard because I think it's easy, especially for me who's lighter. I think it's easy for me to be like, oh, well, it's not a problem. It's not because that's a huge issue in the Black community. Like a lot of people with lighter tones, they are more accepted and it's really, really
Hmm.
unfortunate and it's really, really sad. And I really hope that there's a change within that because we're already struggling with white people looking at us a certain way. And then like within our own community, there's people that are against each other and that's
Yes.
huge. So,
And I think, yeah, and that's, I think there's colorism in so many other different
oh
like
my gosh, it's everywhere.
race
It's
and
not just Black
ethnic and
people. And that's what
even,
people don't realize as well.
yeah,
Like it's literally everywhere. Like,
yes.
even with you being mixed, like if you look more passing as white or you look more Asian, that could go in two very different directions. Like I mean, people are extremely racist towards Asian people as well. Like it's everywhere. There's racism everywhere. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think people don't understand. I mean, yeah,
I
definitely there's colorism in every race for sure.
and I feel like, I mean, yes, there does, I guess, come some kinds of privileges when you have, I guess, certain skin tones or whatever, like as a mixed person being multifacial. I think everyone has some kind of privilege. It just
Of
depends on
course.
what that is. And then it's like you can recognize that,
Of course.
and then like still, like I can recognize that, like, you know, with all the Asian hate, you know, and how that's becoming more, people are seeing that more. And like I've had
Yes.
people be like, well, aren't you concerned about your mom? And I'm like, yes, but that's only if somebody knows, because she is a darker skin, she's Okinawan, so she's
Right.
darker skin. I'm like, she can honestly pass for being Hispanic, like people often think
That
she's
is
Hispanic.
true.
And
Right.
so, and the same with me, and I'm like, so I'm lucky that there's at least that privilege in that we can say that. Like,
And you see how it's crazy, right? Because a lot of people won't even want to acknowledge that because
mhm,
it can sound it's like a really thin line between sounding like I'm better than you
right,
and I'm just accepting reality. Do you know what I mean? Like by you accepting that because that really is the reality of it. It's unfortunate that your mom would have to, God forbid, if anything, if anyone was like
right.
racially profiling her, have to, pass as like a Hispanic woman, but that's the reality that we live in. And it's like it's sad at the end of the day to even have to say that, but it's just what's happening.
Yeah, and I
Obviously
mean,
not day to day. It's not happening every day, but it is definitely something that, you've seen and acknowledged. So
and yeah, and I'm like, and it can be hard because you're having to pretend to be someone you're not or
right,
something
of
that you're
course,
not. But
of
there's,
course.
you still have that, I guess, privilege over what somebody who, is can't pass as being multifacial and can't pass. And so, but I think it's about like recognizing that privilege. And then yeah, and I guess that's why I don't get too upset like with people when they are so confused, because it is and like it's a big thing for me where like it's not necessarily me that's confused but other people. And
People.
so like, and most of the time like when people are like, well then what are you and where are you from, and so then you're not really white or you're not really Japanese, well are you more Japanese or are you, I'm like what like that whole, well oh you're not really Japanese, and I'm like, well if to you I'm not that Japanese, that
So
like
be it.
I know who I am, and what you
Exactly.
think isn't necessarily
And I think that's a
what.
huge step too, because when we're younger, right, we are
Mhm.
trying to, the biggest thing we're concerned about is fitting in. I
Right.
don't, everybody is. Every kid, the only concern they have in school is fitting in. So, that is kind of like a defense mechanism until we get to the age of realizing like it's kind of like accepting like I don't care. Like you said, I know who I am at the end of the day. And
Right.
if you have an issue with it, I'm sorry, but that's on you. That has nothing to do with me anymore. Like if you're offended by who I am as a person or you don't understand my background, like this is what I'm telling you. If you can choose to believe it or not.
And I feel like that's one big thing difference too, like within the military and then within being civilian, is that you do tend to gravitate to people who look like you. It's
Right,
normal,
of
it's
course.
natural.
Of course.
But then in the military, it's so diverse, like you said, that so then
Yeah,
like
and you don't have a choice. It's like
right.
it's not like, in like a little office job and you're like, "Oh, like I like Susie more than Lily." Like, no, it's like Susie and Lily and me are all gonna work together and we don't have a
Oh,
choice.
here,
And
yep.
so yeah, and so you form this bond though. Like there's people, I met like the most countryest white people ever, people that I never thought I would ever hang out with, and they're some of my best friends. Like it's cool. Like you hang out because you don't know until you know, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone is scared of the unknown. Like
Yes.
we're terrified of, stepping outside this bubble of our like of
Hmm.
whatever we're comfortable with. And
Yes.
so when you're forced to be uncomfortable, then you realize like, oh my gosh, like who cares? Like everybody when you're, especially working, right? When you're relying on this person to help you day to day, like you really form this strong bond with them and you don't care what their skin tone is. You don't care what their accent's like or what their background is. At the end of the day, it's like we're all helping each other and we're getting the work done.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And then you're missing out on so much more fun and so
So
much
much. It's
knowledge if you don't
ridiculous.
like get out
It's
of that
really
comfort
sad. It's
zone.
a
And
it's a sad life. I feel really bad for people like that because they don't even realize like, it's like wow, it's like a rainbow on the other side. It's like there's so many people. Like, who cares what people look like on the outside? It doesn't matter.
yep. So when you got out of the military after the 5 years, did you go back to Florida then?
Yeah, so that was really difficult for me because I was either going to re-enlist to do shore duty and go to Maryland or actually Japan. So I was like, I don't know though. It's like if I stay in for another 3 years, like I might as well just stay in forever, like
Hmm.
for 20 years and do my 20. And I was like, I was 24 years old. I just turned 24, and I was like, No, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. But I knew I was like, I either get out now or I'm not getting out. So
Right.
I started preparing for that also. The military doesn't make it necessarily easy just to separate, that's really on you to kind of take that leap. You're so used to this structure and this day-to-day life. Every single
Hmm.
day of your life has this structure. You wake up at 6 a.m., you go to work, you come back, you do this, you did it's like it's very, orderly. So that was kind of weird for me because when I all I wanted to do was become a civilian, and then I became a civilian, and I was like, now what? Do you know what I mean? Like it's a huge transition period. So I knew I wanted to go back to Florida because I love Florida so much and I missed it. California is extremely expensive. I was really happy to be stationed in California though because it was the West Coast. I've never been over there. I traveled all over California. Every weekend, I got like every chance I had, I was in a different city. So that was good. But yeah, I knew I wanted to come back to Florida. I just knew I didn't want it to be Melbourne because
Okay.
I was like, you know what? I don't want to get stuck
Been
in
there, done that.
that loop again. Right, exactly, right? So my mom had already moved to Colorado my senior or the year I went to the Navy, my mom moved to Colorado. So I didn't have family in Melbourne anymore.
Okay.
So the Navy will move you anywhere you want for free one
Oh,
time. And
okay.
I was like, if I'm gonna move all my stuff, my car, my stuff from my house, I was like, I'm gonna go to Miami. I'm gonna go to Miami. So I moved to Miami about 3 years ago. And yeah,
You
that's
love it.
I really do. I mean, now it's oh my gosh, inflation. It's really expensive. I can't even breathe here without spending money. But I'm probably gonna still stay in Florida, but go a little more up north because it's just so expensive. But I do love Miami. It really is. That was another culture shock for me too, because there's so many different people out here, especially like Hispanic people. I've never seen this many like Hispanic people in one place ever in my entire
Oh,
life.
really?
No, because Melbourne is I would say predominantly
Oh,
white.
yeah.
You
Oh,
know what I
really?
mean? And yeah, it's more white. Well, there's black people, but like it's more white people, I would say, like
I feel
country.
like I see more Black people in Melbourne when I go, but I guess
You know what?
it's just where they
It's
live
crazy
and
because
Eli's
it's like
friends
it's
and
it's that's what people say. It's either like all black people or you'll be like country white people. But I went to
okay.
I was in Palm Bay. I was more in like the Palm Bay side. So
Okay.
that's more like, you know, country white. But Melbourne is more on like the black side. But
Okay.
yeah, as far as Hispanic people though, that was really like, oh my gosh, I was like, there's Cuban people, Dominican people, people from Argentina, people from Venezuela, like everybody is in Miami, right? It's just like a
The food
little place
must be
everybody can come.
delicious. Like all
Oh
that
my god.
Latin food.
Yes, there's so much good food here. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. So yeah, that was really amazing for me because I really did feel like I was like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful here. Like there's people from everywhere. So I really fit in when I moved to Miami. Um, yeah, I got my place. I knew I wanted to go back to school. I just didn't really know in what yet. I was just so focused in
Mhm.
the military. I was like, what do I even like to do? Like, what do I want to do? So
Right.
I tried to go to school. My mom's an occupational therapist. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I try like physical therapy? Hated it. I went for like a year. I tried, at least I tried it though. I was like, if I'm gonna go back to school and I'm gonna try it to say like I tried school,
Hmm.
I don't know if it was like a transition for me because I've been out of school for 5 years. That was really kind of difficult, but I tried it for a year. I did pretty good. It was just really stressful for me. And then I went to cosmetology school and I have my cosmetology license. I did hair for about a year and a half, and now I am in laser technician school.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so I'm just
fun.
getting certified in everything because in Miami, I mean, everyone cares about their hair and their skin and their. that's huge out here.
It's a pretty mobile skill to have too. Like you can
For
go
sure. It's
move
everywhere.
anywhere and probably find a
Exactly.
job or at
Yeah,
least have
everyone
your
needs their hair
own.
done, and
Yes.
everyone wants a facial, so it's nice.
Let me let you go. I'm gonna go. I gotta pack for this weekend. We're taking a trip to
Yes.
see my parents. But yes,
And it
thank
was
you
really nice
again.
meeting you. I can
You
really
as
ramble.
well.
Sorry.
No, so can I. So